Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Rob, and today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different media streamers from Zidoo. This is going to be a follow-up to our previous review of the Zidoo Z2000 Pro, but in this video we're going to be starting with Zidoo's entry-level player, the Z9X Pro, and comparing it to both the mid-range Z2000 Pro and the top-of-the-line UHD5000. And hopefully this will help to determine which Zidoo is right for you. So as I did in the Z2000 Pro, I want to start by mentioning that these players are strictly designed as in-home media streamers, meaning they don't give you the ability to stream from the internet on platforms like Netflix or YouTube, for example. Now, I have heard that you can sideload some apps onto these, but they're still not meant to work like an NVIDIA Shield or other streaming boxes. With that said, what exactly are they designed to do? Well, the Zidoo players are meant to let you easily watch your own rips of Blu-ray movies and TV shows from different sources. You can either use them with a dedicated NAS, which makes your movies and TV shows available over your local network, or you can store the content locally on a hard drive connected to the Zidoo player and skip the more involved setup of a NAS. Now, since this isn't really a review of any single player, but rather a comparison of all 3 models here, let's go ahead and start with the Z9X Pro, which is currently selling on Amazon for around $249. Now, this is the most basic model that Zidoo offers. Looking at the front, you're going to get a small status display, and on the left side is a combined SATA power and data port for hooking up a hard drive, and on the right you also get a couple of USB 2.0 ports. Moving around to the back, you get a gigabit Ethernet, a single USB 3.0 port, HDMI out that's capable of 4K 60, Toslink optical audio, an AV output port, an RS-232 serial jack, and a 12-volt DC power input for hooking up the external brick, along with the power supply switch. It also supports Wi-Fi and Bluetooth with its external antennas. As far as build quality goes, all of the Zidoo players we've checked out so far have been great, and the Z9X Pro is no exception. The top and sides are made from a really nice anodized aluminum, and the bottom plate seems to be made from steel. Moving on to the Z2000 Pro, which retails for $559 on Amazon, you get a much larger aluminum chassis with a similar type of display. But what's not similar is the inclusion of the built-in hard drive bay behind this aluminum door, which allows you to put up to a 16 terabyte hard drive inside of the player. This is a lot more convenient compared to the Z9X Pro's external SATA port, which forces the hard drive to sit exposed next to the player. I should also mention that, like the Z9X Pro, the Z2000 Pro also has 2 USB 2.0 ports hidden behind this same door. Most of the other differences are going to be around the back, where we have an AC power input for the high-quality built-in power supply, which is going to be a lot more convenient. There's also a cooling fan and a similar collection of ports to the Z9X Pro. Gigabit Ethernet, USB 3.0, HDMI, and Toslink optical audio with the addition of a coaxial digital audio output. The other ports are actually just full-size versions of what was available from the Z9X Pro. So regular RCA ports for the AV out and a normal DB9 serial port connection are also available. And that pretty much sums up the exterior differences between the Z9X Pro and the Z2000 Pro. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the UHD5000, which isn't available on Amazon at the moment, but can be had from retailers like Futeco for $1,020 at the time of this video. The UHD5000 is the only player that comes with a full-size aluminum chassis, which was really important to me, because even though Zidoo doesn't offer any kind of rack mount options, I figured out a way to mount rack ears on my unit and install it into my equipment rack. And I'll show you later in the video how I went about that. Like the other players, you get a basic display, but with this model, the whole front plate is actually a door, which opens to reveal 2 internal hard drive bays, as well as 2 USB 2.0 ports and a power button. On the back of the player, you can see some of the things that really sets the UHD5000 apart. You get another USB 2.0 port on the left, along with a USB 3.0 port, gigabit Ethernet, and like the other units, you get a main HDMI output. But unlike the other units, the UHD5000 also has an audio-only HDMI output, which can really come in handy if, for example, you have a 4K TV, but your receiver is an older unit that doesn't support a 4K signal. In this case, you would just connect the main output to your TV and the audio-only output to your receiver. Other than that, you also get a full-sized RS-232 port, and because of the UHD5000's audio capabilities, they also provided a USB audio input for hooking the unit up to a music streamer or even a computer. And this lets you take advantage of the high-end ESS 9068 DAC chips inside. On the UHD5000, Zidoo has also added an IR input and some of the same Toslink, coaxial, and AV options as the Z2000 Pro. Another key difference is the inclusion of fully balanced XLR outputs, as well as high-quality panel-mounted RCA outputs to support its superior audio playback capabilities. And to top that off, we have an AC power input, but with the UHD5000, it actually goes to power two independent power supplies. A linear power supply with a toroidal transformer that supplies clean power for the analog audio circuit, and an efficient switching power supply for the digital circuitry. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up all the external differences for these players. So now let's talk about some of the specs that differ between these units. First of all, as far as video quality and playback goes, it's been our experience that all three of these units are going to have the same excellent video playback capabilities. But unfortunately, they all suffer from the same little glitches and issues that we noticed in our Z2000 Pro review, so if you want to know what those were, make sure you check out that video. They all feature the same ARM processor, Mali GPU, 4 gigs of DDR RAM, and 32 gigs of storage, with the exception of the UHD5000, which comes with 64 gigs, allowing the unit to store more movie metadata compared to the others, but that won't really make much of a difference unless you have an extremely large library. Another difference we noticed between these players is the UI. The Z2000 Pro and the UHD5000 feature this really clean home interface that we really like, but the Z9X Pro has a different interface which seems to be more basic, and it's not quite as nice looking in our opinion. I'm also pretty sure that the Z20 Pro also features the same interface. Aside from that, all the submenus appear to be identical across all models, and their performance is very similar. Now, we've pretty much gone over all the differences that we've noticed. If you come across any that we've missed, we'd appreciate it if you'd let us know. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the price versus performance of these players. As we mentioned, these will all give you equal quality video playback. So if you're on a budget and strictly want to stream your content over the network from a NAS, the Z9X Pro is a solid choice in my opinion. The only negative that we can think of with this player is the fact that your bare hard drive is literally exposed to being damaged while in use. So if you don't want an exposed hard drive just hooked up to the player, and you want to keep your media stored locally on the unit, we think the Z2000 Pro is definitely a worthwhile upgrade because of its built-in hard drive bay. And I personally think that the Z2000 Pro just looks more like a legit piece of home theater equipment with its larger chassis. You also get the benefit of the internal power supply, making this a much cleaner setup, but again, this does come at a higher cost. Out of these three players, the one that I decided to spend my money on was the UHD5000. And while I'm sure Zidoo would love for me to recommend this player to everyone, the truth is $1,000 for a media player is a lot of money, and for most people, it's not necessary. In my case, like I mentioned, it was important for me to have a full-size component that I could rack mount, which probably isn't a requirement for most people. But because I mentioned that I'd show you how I pulled this off, this is what I did. Basically, I just bought a set of Emotiva 1.5U rack ears and used a lot of 3M tape. Then I just attached them to the player, and as you can see here, it has no problem holding the weight of the unit. The rack ears have these lips on the bottom that actually support the weight, so there's no way the player could ever come off once installed in the rack. Aside from that, I also have an audio system which allows me to take full advantage of the UHD5000's high-end audio playback capabilities, and it can be used as a reference here on our YouTube channel while testing out other types of gear. Another reason I decided to go with the UHD5000 is because I'd been in the market for a higher-end 4K Blu-ray player, and I was considering buying the Panasonic UB9000, which also cost around $1,000. But one thing that kept me from following through with that purchase is the fact that I seldom use my Sony UBP X800 player. And since we've already gone through the process of ripping our movie collection for streaming over the network, it just made more sense to put the money in a high-quality media player to give us the convenience of streaming rather than investing in another Blu-ray player that I'll never use. So all in all, we're really impressed with all the Zidoos that we've tested, and we feel like any one of these players would be a great addition to a home entertainment setup where you want to get the most out of your movie collection. No matter what model you get, if you're watching movies and TV shows, you'll be happy with these players. If you want to check out any of the players that we showed in this video, or any of the latest units in Zidoo's line of home network streamers, then we'll be sure to leave a link to their website down in the description below. And with that said, I think it's time to wrap up this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you thought the video was helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. And as always, have an awesome day.